This is the Media Police Post, broadcasting from the Fort Hall School of Government. In this show, we police the state of truth in the Republic. And because truth is communicated to us by journalists and analysts, we have made it our civic duty at the Fort Hall School of Government to put it to the test. We advance from two confirmed truths about the media. One, and according to Roger Stone, the media is either lazy or evil. And for the most part, it is both evil and lazy. That is why the truth, their truth, must be put to a test. Two, that journalism is verified gossip. In fact, what is presented to us as news analysis is gossip that has been verified by journalists. This gossip has to be ground-truthed. We will assess the state of truth in what they submit to the Republic, and we will pass verdict on what is true and what is not. For the record, we are not journalists. We are thinkers. We are not lazy or evil, and we do not verify gossip. What we give you is the truth that sets you free. On today's show, we will discuss ideas that reflect unformed and uninformed opinion and ideas that made you stupid. These are narratives that fell into the cognitive trap of we see things as we are, not as they are, narratives based on conjuncture history, and those that smack of envelope journalism. Welcome, CSNGK.
Thank you.
And I'll begin today's show. On Friday last week, the Court of Appeal gave its judgment concerning the BBI constitutional amendment process and bill. And as we all know, reggae has come to a sharp halt. However, no one has yet published a serious opinion piece on the judgment, and I cannot blame the columnists and pundits. We all need time to process a ruling that took the whole day to read. Besides, the copies of Friday's judgment will only be made public today. But having sat through the Friday reading of the judgment, I have to note that the decision by the Court of Appeal was not unanimous. The judges of the court were, or at least some of the judges, had dissenting or opposing opinions on some of the issues raised. And a dissenting opinion means that there was no consensus, no finality, and the questions raised in the BBI case are still up for debate. So because of this lack of unanimity of the judges, an appeal to the Supreme Court may be necessary. This is because the BBI case was about the interpretation and application of fundamental provisions in our Constitution, questions that may need a definitive answer from the highest level of our judiciary, the Supreme Court. Now, the AG has identified 3 such questions that the Supreme Court should explain for the avoidance of doubt, and I agree with him. Question 1. Is the basic structure doctrine applicable in Kenya? And if it is, to what extent? While it is true, as Justice Kiage stated, that in the past our Constitution has been dismembered over time, would our Moi-era PTSD scare us to the point where we would never amend the Constitution? And would all amendments have to go through a referendum or the 4-step process that they stated? Question 2. To what extent is the president immune from legal proceedings? Do you sue the president while he or she is in office? And if so, for what? Or would you hold the president accountable for their actions after they leave office? And finally, question 3. Who can amend the Constitution through popular initiative? And what procedure would they then follow? The wisest man that ever lived, King Solomon of the Bible, declared that what has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. And it would appear to me that we are walking the judicial path that was taken by America, the global standard for democracy and judicial independence. And if we are walking that path, a path of judicial activism, then we must be alive to and careful to avoid another term, that of judicial tyranny. C.D. Kilgore, in his book Judicial Tyranny, made a thoroughgoing investigation of the federal courts in interpreting the U.S. Constitution. And after his analysis, he came to the conclusion that certain judicial decisions were erroneous because the Supreme Court had substituted its will as to what the law should be for its judgment as to what the law actually is. May this never be our fate.
Indeed. Amen to that. We can be certain that this week, even though we haven't seen any serious opinions just yet, we will be subjected to a multitude of legal analysis as everyone becomes what Professor Githu Muigai would call a legal mortician. As we also undertake a post-mortem of the judgment and what it means for country, there's a phrase that has been constantly ringing in my mind, and it is haunting. It is a Latin maxim, fiat justitia ruat caelum. and it means let justice be done though the heavens may fall. The maxim signifies the belief that justice should be done regardless of the consequences. It is a radical judicial expression that belongs to the school of deontology, a school of thought I suspect majority of the judges subscribe to. But what is deontology? Deontology focuses on the moral value in an act itself rather than the outcome it leads to, hence the maxim, let justice be done, though the heavens may fall. The alternative is consequentialism, which is about judging decisions by the goodness of their outcomes. With this in mind, some of the pronouncements by the judges reveal their inclination to deontology, a huge focus on means more than ends, process and procedure more than substance. By the time someone is arguing that instead of taking one bill with 70 proposals to Kenyans in a referendum, let each of those 70 amendment proposals be considered in 70 separate referendums, and that each process should be like the one we went through for the 2010 Constitution. Then you sit back and you ask yourself, we have to go through all that so that children across the country can get more bursary, but also that can't happen at the same time as introducing measures to fight corruption more effectively, or at the same time as devolving more resources. We have to choose which one comes first, prepare 70 multi-billion budgets, and go through 70 separate political campaigns and referendums. I couldn't help but think of the Pharisees of old who complicated the law and made it burdensome. Where the Constitution uses the word amendment, for instance, to make their point, the judges introduced concepts outside of the Constitution such as dismemberment. They told us it is a change that does violence to the Constitution. Fine, but I found myself wondering, which proposal was doing violence to the Constitution as proposed in BBI? And yet, most of them kept reminding us over and over again that the intentions of the president were noble. But despite their recognition of the noble intent, they still insisted on sacrificing the just peace and equitable prosperity which the BBI sought to achieve at the altar of academic constitutionalism. So, can it truly be said that nobody has lost because the Constitution has won? How has the Constitution won if Maraga asked the president to dissolve parliament because the 2/3 gender rule was yet to be fully implemented, and yet BBI was introducing 50-50 gender parity in the Senate? And additionally, every county was to either have a woman governor or deputy governor with a ministerial docket in the county executive. If you throw that out, how has the Constitution won? Would 50% of Senate being women have been violence to the Constitution? If we say that MCAs should have governors accountable for how money is spent, and that the executive should also be held accountable in Parliament, would this have been doing violence to the Constitution? And how has the Constitution won if you throw out that proposal? As you ponder that, I leave you with a quote from the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "Law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress."
Fantastic.
And that dam will burst at some point.
Exactly. So it has been said that when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And when all you have is politics, everything looks like a political argument. Since the BBI judgment, there has been a great political argument taking place. The court, as a mediating institution, had a chance to create a deeper model of democracy and development, and they denied us this. And given the chance to make us better citizens, they also failed us. It made me question the court's power to determine constitutional meaning and whether we as a people have ceded too much power to them. In 2010, those we entrusted got rid of the Prime Minister's seat, which created the Gamma Kalenjin dominance that we see today. BBI was in fact meant to rectify this. But now let's turn. We must build out our political scenarios. If BBI fails, could we say that Raila left the handshake with nothing? Well, quite the contrary. For despite us not knowing what was negotiated at Harambee House the day of the handshake, who will now deny that Uhuru promised Rao the presidency in 2022? And when I read an article by Henry Makori in the Star titled, "Raila is Isolated, 2022 looks set to be RUTO versus One Kenya," I was even more convinced of Uhuru's strategy. Makori naively likens Uhuru's endorsement of Raila to Moi's attempt to impose Uhuru Kenyatta in 2002. He is wrong because whereas Uhuru was a greenhorn candidate in 2002, Raila is by no means a novice for 2022. Let us also remember that when it comes to Raila's political persona, when he seems weak, he is strong, and when he appears strong, he is weak. So although at the moment Raila seems isolated and at his weakest, he is strong. Musalia and Kalonzo think they have seen an opportunity to isolate Raila, but Raila still holds the key to the current political stalemate because he is alive to the fact that individually they cannot get to the 50% plus one threshold in order to win an election. And if the hardest task will be to win Mount Kenya and its diaspora, who offers the best chance to do this? Ruto may get the Hasoras, but Raila will get the Gama elite. And on this, I suppose Uhuru ought to remind Mount Kenya that Jaramogi once took one for the team at independence when he said, no Jomo, no government. And the time may have come to repay this. So it'll be easy for Mount Kenya to turn their anger to Uhuru for propping up Raila. But he is pointing out, nonetheless, the bare truth that the One Kenya Alliance is naked without Babaman. And as Benjamin Franklin once said, we must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly, we shall all hang separately.
Without Babaman, there is no One Kenya Alliance or 50% plus one.
There you go.
Thank you again for joining us on the Media Police Post. Columnists, we've put you on notice and we're waiting to hear what you will say on this.
Yeah.
See you next Monday.